Here we go. Week one's in the books. We got a lot to talk about. We have the two deeps that are exactly the same. We're going to shift our focus to Oregon State. So, Jake, we got to watch them again. We picked them both. Both of us picked them to beat Washington State, and instead they suffered a 38-28 loss at Reser Stadium in front of a regular crowd of nobody there. So, what are your thoughts on the game?
The offense for Oregon State looked really efficient. We differ on the opinion. Gebbia, he threw over 70% completion percentage. In my opinion, that's a phenomenal game. I know that it's a lot of it's short dink and dunk. It was his first ever start for Oregon State. He had a pretty good game. He didn't have any turnovers. Where you see Oregon State really succeed is with Jamar Jefferson. Dude had a $120 with 3 touchdowns. That offense rolls through him. And if I'm Washington, if I'm the head coach of Washington, I'm planning my defense just to stop Jamar. The dude is a freight train, and he carries that offense. And without that pass doesn't. Gebbia doesn't complete 70% of his passes without Jefferson getting 120 yards and 3 touchdowns. So if I'm Washington's defense, I'm really honing in on that running game.
Yeah, and Jamar Jefferson, they were kind of talking about it a little bit on the air that he absolutely owns the Cougars. He's got, I think, double-digit touchdowns against Washington State alone in his career.
Right.
But if you look at it, and why I think it's deceiving is when the game was, the first quarter of the game, obviously Tristan Gebbia wasn't necessarily sharp when they started. And, that could be it's his first start there at Oregon State. He was off. He was missing throws that were open, in my opinion. And then once Washington State was able to, get some pressure on him on the run, he was really, really bad.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. You look at Jamar Jefferson's numbers and you're really impressed. 21 carries for 120 yards, which you're thinking that's kind of what they need.
Yeah.
But what Oregon State's missing is if you take away combine Jamar Jefferson's with the other runs in the game, you end up with 24 carries. And for an Oregon State team that likes to run, that's not going to cut it.
Yeah. Well, then that's playing catch up too.
Exactly.
They were down the entire game, so it's hard to run the ball a lot when you're playing catch up.
Right.
If Oregon State is down 1 score for into the third quarter, you're going to see a lot more touches for Jamar. And let's not lose sight of the fact that that's against a Washington State defense versus a University of Washington defense, where we technically do really good against, usually do really good against the run. So, especially with this new linebacking core, our hopes are really high for this defense, especially against the run, because that's kind of what our weak point was last year. And that's kind of an outlier versus seasons past where, you had Ben Burke-Irvin and Azim Victor, where those guys were locking down runs all the time. So we're looking to get back to that point, and starting against Oregon State this week is a good stepping stone to get to that point.
Right. And that's kind of one of my arguments about Gebbia is, Oregon State was down the entire game and they were having to throw. Washington State was allowing balls in front of them caught. And I think that's why you see an inflated stat line for him.
Sure.
My takeaway from Gebbia in this game, and then we'll move over to the defense, is I think he's going to have a really, really tough day when it comes to trying to complete passes against a secondary that's much superior to Washington State's.
I 100% agree. There's no doubt in anybody's mind that our secondary is better than Washington State's.
Now, here's the question. What are you more surprised about? Are you more surprised about how Oregon State's defense played, or are you more surprised that a Washington State running back ended up with 147 yards?
I would say the first, because if there was going to be a Washington State running back that ended up with 140 yards, I would have thought it would have been Borghi.
Right.
And for him not to play and Washington State still to be that efficient on the run is pretty impressive, really, in my opinion.
It just blows my mind that a Washington State, we're so used to them never running the ball in the air raid system, to see Rolovich's run and shoot offense with Deion McIntosh, who obviously is going to be the backup running back, have a really, really good game. And he showed a couple of plays where he showed some really, really good balance that kept him up and bounced him off of some Beaver defenders that looked like maybe they haven't done as much tackling due to some of the COVID protocols. He looked really, really efficient. And then Jaden DeLaura, obviously true freshman, had a very efficient game for, after they took the lead, he had to just manage it, and he made the throws he needed to.
Yeah, absolutely. And Oregon State had one turnover, but that was against the starting true freshman quarterback that had never played a collegiate snap in his life.
Yeah, in the end zone, he was looking for a touchdown, and the guy made a good play.
Yeah, and if I'm the coach of that team, I'm saying take another shot.
Yeah,
go for
absolutely.
it. Keep that confidence. You just go for it. I don't know if our offense will score at the rate that Wazoo's always does, because they're generally a high-scoring offense, and I don't think that's going to change much. But I don't think it's going to be a huge fall off to the amount that we score. But I do think our defense is going to be a heck of a lot better than theirs. So I think that's where you're going to see the battle. Now, my point earlier with Oregon State, them not getting to see any film on us, and then, us getting to see film on them, that's beneficial for us. But at the same point, I think Washington State being able to play and playing well and getting another game and finding the rhythm with this new offense and these new players and this new head coach is definitely beneficial for them against us. And I think that's bad for us, because any snaps that they can get as a team with the starting freshman quarterback is going to be beneficial. And that's where I think this is kind of a downturn for Washington with not being able to play.
Right. And I mean, the cool thing about not being a coach or a player is we get to look ahead. And so I think you're right about the Washington State issue. If this was a regular year and the Apple Cup was at the end of the season, I would say it really doesn't matter. But the Apple Cup's in 2 weeks,
right?
So I think that there's some validity to that. When it comes to Oregon State, the thing they will have that Washington won't is they will have valuable game minutes, and I think that's something that I'm not going to lose sleep over, but you can see it as an advantage that they actually got to knock the rust off and play.
Yeah.
But looking at this Oregon State defense, I'm not sure if Hamilcar Rashed was hurt or what. He didn't play in as many snaps as I thought he would.
Yeah.
And then he ended up, he didn't really have a huge impact on the day. He only had 2 tackles. I just don't see this Oregon State defense. Their front 7 got pushed around a little bit by Washington State, and we know more than maybe the nation about how good and athletic this Washington offensive line is. I think you're going to see a big day out of the running backs like Washington State did, and I think that's going to be one of those things that, is Washington going to score 38 points? Maybe, because I think they're going to want to, whoever their starting quarterback is, they're going to want him get some reps. But I think they, after they get a lead, they take the air out of the ball and just shove it down Oregon State's throat.
Yeah, I agree. We're starting a brand new quarterback, and if we're up 10, well, you're going to want to be up more than that. If you're up 20 with 5 minutes to go, I don't think you're going to see Jimmy Lake pull that quarterback, especially if, we know who the starting quarterback is going to be all year. And if he's going to roll with that one starting quarterback, he's probably going to leave him out there. Game speed, it's a brand new – I mean, with Eason, he already had starting quarterback role before Georgia, and he already had game reps, first string guys. So whoever this new quarterback for us, whether it's going to be Sermon or Morris or whoever it's going to be, you're going to see them play as much as physically possible this year because it's a shortened season, and you're going to want them to have that game experience for next year.
Yeah, and one thing I would add to that about not taking out a guy or maybe even not taking the foot off the gas is I think style points are going to matter more in this COVID shortened season than in any other season because one of the tiebreakers that we could see very easily, especially with Washington losing a game and getting a no contest, is they're going to look at point differential and they're going to look at common opponents and how you the scores, the point differential in those as well. So I can see Washington, if they have the chance, to maybe put it on Oregon State a little bit.